New figures released this week show prescription drug abuse in the UK is amongst the worst in Europe. 16% of women who were surveyed admitted to the addiction, and 1 in 5 of those said they take prescription pills more than once a week.
See, I hate that word abuse. It's as if you're deliberately doing this, like as if, you know, it's a conscious decision.
But medically, I suppose it would be considered abuse.
Misuse may be a term perhaps that would be better. Michele Kirsch joins us now. Michele was taking up to 40 milligrams of Valium a day, which means nothing to anybody. It just means we just see a tablet and you take it and whatever. And you take... Why do you take Valium? You take Valium, Michele, I presume, because you're anxious, I suppose. Yeah. What then did it lead to?
You develop a habit for it, so you need more in order to achieve the same effect. Yes. It doesn't make you high or see magical unicorns or whatever. It just makes you feel not terrified.
You can function.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
We said 40 milligrams there, Zoe. What would be the prescribed dosage, just so people can get that into perspective of how much Michele was actually taking?
Yeah, well, this particular drug comes in 3 different strengths per tablet, the strongest being 10 milligrams.
The blue ones.
But, you know, generally, this isn't a prescription drug that people should be on long-term at all. So 40 milligrams every day is a huge dose.
But, you know, you say that, Zoe, and I think it's always very easy. Doctors are all coming out now and saying, oh, no, you shouldn't do this. But doctors put us in this position, A, in the first place, and B, what I'd like to say is, what do you do if you don't get your Valium? What, you feel just like rubbish then all day? Was that the alternative, or in pain?
No, and you're absolutely right. And there are lots of different reasons why people might be addicted to medications like Valium. And the number 1 reason is that they used to be prescribed in that way. So now modern practices of general practice is we try and avoid prescribing them. There is a use for them and we do use them, but they should be used sparingly and in the lowest doses possible. For an example would be mental health crisis. But we do have a huge problem. We have lots of people who've been taking them for 20, 30 years and they were started by their GPs.
And Michele, yours was started by your GP at a very young age. Very sadly, your father died. You moved to America with your mother to start a new life there. But, you know, the trauma of losing your father was having a huge effect on you, and you were prescribed pills at that very young age.
Yes, that's correct. And as Eamonn said, what it did was it helped me go from non-functioning, not being able to go to school or engage in activities or do anything, to just feeling the way I imagined other people felt, which was normal. And it got me moving and being normal. And then, but after being on them in such a long time, I didn't know how to not be on them.
Yes, so you were on them then, and then in your 20s you moved back here to the UK. Yeah. You had a very successful career. You were a music freelance writer working on music magazines. So you were still taking the prescription drugs at this point, were you?
Yes, but anxiety is a funny animal, so you don't feel it consistently, in my case, all the time. So it was up and down. So there were times where I was more high-functioning and less reliant on the drugs than others, and other times when I needed it quite a lot. And then it slowly crept up. And then a new regulation came in through Europe, which meant they can only prescribe in a very small amount. And then everybody who had been on them for a very long time, like myself, was in trouble. We had to find other ways to get them.
And did you find other ways? I mean, you're so desperate for them at this point, you personally, that you did have to find other ways.
Yes, I did. So I found out through a friend of a friend of a friend, there was something called a dirty doctor. Was, you know, physically dirty. Yeah. He was just prescribing off record, and he usually worked in the back of a pharmacy that would sell vaccinations for holidays. But once you got a little coded conversation going, it was apparent.
So you were then taking that unprescribed from the dirty doctor, and then...
Well, he was prescribing.
Yes, sorry. And then because of your lifestyle, you were young and you started going drinking, so you were then mixing alcohol with these drugs, so everything spiralled, really.
Later, yeah. After a friend told me that if you couldn't get them in sufficient amounts, if you add alcohol to the mix, it would potentiate or activate the drug so that it acted stronger than it actually was.
How bad did it get for you?
At the worst, I was probably on 40 milligrams a day and drinking, I'm not quite sure how much neat spirits. I was a mum, I still am a mum, to children, and I wasn't functioning at all. And I had a notion that I would go to lock myself away in a bed set a la Train Spotting and lock all the doors and get myself cleaned up. But that doesn't really work.
Yeah.
I don't even think it worked in the movie.
What does work, Michele? Because you see a lot of people will be in the same situation as you, and they will not be able to imagine life without their prescription drug.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, I mean, the book is interesting. The book does what it says on the cover. It's called Clean, a story of addiction, recovery and the removal of stubborn stains, which is very well described.
But you had to have rehab, didn't you, to get through this?
Yes, indeed, I did. So I was lucky in that in those days, this would have been about 2011, the borough I was living in London, if they felt you were redeemable and savable, they would sponsor your rehab. So you went to rehab lessons, as it were, and then I got into rehab. And it was a 12-week programme, and they withdrew me slowly. They tapered me from the medication at 6 weeks, and I kept on saying, "You're going too fast, you're going too fast."
Yes, yes.
Because every addict will say that.
Well, it's frightening.
But
it's
I suppose,
frightening
Zoe, the message you're saying now is let's not get there in the first place.
Well, ideally, let's not get there in the first place, but also there are lots of people, as you've said, out there that are struggling with this problem and perhaps feeling hopeless, feeling shame. I think my message is, you know, as GPs, we do not judge, and you can come and tell us the complete truth of the story, and there are various different ways that we can help. And I think people are afraid to come and see their GP because they're going to be told, you have to stop taking this medication, and that's not the case. If somebody is taking drugs that they're getting illegally, I would rather them come to me, then we can take over the prescription. Or we could do it. Sometimes it takes 2-3 years to reduce the dose down gradually, if somebody wants to do that.
Well, you might not reduce it. You might decide, actually, they need it at this point. So they shouldn't worry that you're just going to take the pills away from them.
Exactly. Sometimes we can change to other medications that are less addictive. And sometimes, yeah, I have a lady in her 70s, and, you know, sometimes if people have been on them for a very, very long period of time, there's no benefit in stopping it. So there are some occasions where we will take over the prescription and continue it, if that's in the best interest.
And Michele, it is proof that, you know, with the right help, don't be frightened, talk to somebody, and that you can get the right help, and eventually you can be weaned off, and you're living a good life now. And
yes, indeed.
Stay clean.
Yes.
Stay clean, as the book says.
As the book says.
Thank you, Michele. Nice
Thank you
to
very
meet you.
much. Thank you.
Thanks,
very
Zoe.
much, Steve.